From the studios of Atlantic Television Network in Port Harcourt, this is ATN International News. Now the headlines. Kenyan man charged for killing activist. Unknown disease is severe malaria, says Health Ministry. Ethiopia passes law to open banking. U.S. government deports Cardenas to Mexico. Inflation rate ticks down to 1.9%. And Taiwan to build more robotics. These and more stories to come your way in a moment. And now the details. Kenyan court has sentenced the man to 50 years in prison after he was convicted of the murder of gay rights activist Edwin Kiptoo nearly 2 years ago. Kiptoo's killing in early 2023 sent shockwaves through the LGBT community in the conservative East African nation. His body was found in a metal box in the western city of Eldoret. His housemate, Jackton Odia, murdered early this month. Yes, my client has been sentenced to 50 years imprisonment. At the moment, I have not received any instructions to appeal. Odiambo's lawyer, Sami Mathai, told reporters late on Monday. Odiambo had denied murdering Kiptoo when he was arraigned in early February 2023. Series of Gilead Sciences, Lena Kapava, on that timeline said Hu Yang, head of supply operations at the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis and Malaria. However, she said a lot of things need to happen first, including the injectable drug receiving regulatory approvals from authorities like the United States Food and Drug Administration and the World Health Organization. Lenacapavir is already approved for use as a treatment for multi-drug resistant HIV, costing around $42,250 for the first year of therapy in the United States. Civil war, slow progress with reforms, and the foreign exchange crunch have deterred investors. In June, the cabinet approved the draft law, which allows foreign banks to establish subsidiaries, open branches or representative offices, and buy shares in local banks. Ownership of local banks by foreign strategic investors will be capped. The governor of Ethiopia's central bank, Mamo Miretu, said competition would instead strengthen local lenders. Ethiopia, with more than 120 million people, is one of the most populous on the African continent and has long been in the sight of foreign investors after being shut off for decades. It secured an International Monetary Fund support program in July, hours after it followed one of the fund's key recommendations and floated its bare currency. U.S. government deported drug lord Osile Cardenas on Monday, transferring custody of the ex-Gulf cartel chief known for hyper-violent tactics to Mexican authorities at the border city of Tijuana. Two federal government officials told reporters. One of the sources noted that the one-time cartel boss had been taken to Mexico Almoloya prison and that he now faces 3 criminal charges in his home country. The outstanding charges include one related to organized crime and another for the use of illegally obtained funds, the official said. Cardenas, who is 57, was freed in August after serving more than 2 decades behind bars in maximum security prisons in the United States, and since then has been held by U.S. immigration officials. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) said in a statement that Cardenas was handed over to Mexican law enforcement without incident after crossing the San Diego, California port of entry to Tijuana. Prior to his capture in a 2003 gun battle, Cardenas presided over some of the bloodiest gang violence in Mexico's turbulent past, blamed for transforming drug trafficking by embracing hyper-violent tactics, including decapitations. The Gulf Cartel is one of Mexico's oldest criminal gangs, and its illegal rackets dating back nearly a century, though in recent years it has been eclipsed by the powerful Sinaloa and Jalisco new generation cartels. Cardenas also founded what became the Zetas cartel, an armed wing of the Gulf Cartel made up of for a time became the country's deadliest crime group. Canada's annual inflation dropped by a tick to 1.8% slowdown in prices, while the consumer price index was unchanged on a monthly basis, data showed on Tuesday. Analysts polled by reporters had forecast that inflation would hold steady at 2% rate recorded in October, and the consumer price index would rise 0.1% over the month. The Canadian Central Bank's preferred measures of core inflation, CPI median and CPI trim, were unchanged, though the previous month's data were revised up by a notch. CPI median, or the value of at the middle of the set of prices changes in a month, remained at 2.6%, and CPI trim, which excludes the most extreme prices changes, stayed at 2.7%. Economists noted that continued strength in core measures could be an issue, which has said that with inflation coming down consistently, it was important for the bank to ease rates to prop up the economy. The bank has forecast core inflation 3% for 2.7% roughly. Tuesday's data was the first of 2 inflation reports the BOC will get to assess before its next rate decision on January 29th. The central bank has cut interest rates by 50 basis points at each of its last 2 policy announcements to bring the cumulative reduction in borrowing costs to 175 basis points since June. This has helped restrict the rise in consumer prices to the midpoint of its desired target range of 1 to 3% for several months. BOC Governor Tiff Macklem indicated last week that further rate cuts would have gone more gradual. Currency markets see a 55% chance of another cut of 25 basis points in January, and the Canadian dollar was trading down 0.27% to 1.4280 against the greenback. While prices for travel tours were a leading contributor with a small decline in headline inflation, cost of travel services declined less in November than in October, StatsCan said, noting that higher hotel prices coincided with a series of high-profile concerts in the month. Poland authorities have seized 44 liters of liquid cocaine worth about $7.5 million, which is approximately $1.85 million, that was hidden in cartons of wine, the border guard said on Tuesday. Officers from the Maritime Border Guard unit in the northern port city of Gdańsk worked with customs officers to seize the drugs in the Lublin region of southern Poland. The shipment containing branded wine along with hidden liquid cocaine was initially loaded onto a container ship in a Panamanian seaport, a border guard statement said. With the investigation and more arrests may flow, the guard said. Trump on Monday and vowed to pursue more to sue the Des Moines Register over the poll. 15-year-old girl opened fire in Wisconsin school classroom on Monday. School shootings have been a macabre routine in the United States, with 322 of them this year, according to the K-12 school shooting database website. That is the second highest total of any year since 1966, according to that database, topped only by last year's total of 349 such shootings. Monday's rampage was a rarity in that it was carried out by a girl. Only about 3% of all U.S. mass shootings perpetrated by females, studies show. Jonathan Cantor said on Tuesday that he will step down on Friday, capping off a 3-year tenure in which he aimed to reinvigorate competition law in the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, and some Republicans. Plutocracy is its own kind of dictatorship, Cantor said in a farewell address on Tuesday. When companies larger and more powerful than most world governments threaten individual liberty with coercive private taxation and regulation, it threatens our way of life, he said. Some attorneys and business groups have criticized Khan and Cantor's agenda and supported a return to a more limited view of antitrust that has prevailed for 4 decades. But President-elect Donald Trump's antitrust picks are not the bill setting policy for the Department of Defense underscored how transgender issues have become a focus in U.S. politics. President-elect Donald Trump and many other Republicans blasted Democrats. Deployment of energy storage with PG&E, currently logging 4.2 gigawatts of battery